Colin, thank you for joining us. Another exciting game on the horizon as we travel to Bristol weekend. How are you feeling heading into that one?
Morning. Feeling good. Feeling good, as I'm sure you're going to ask me why. Uh, you know, the last game happened. It's done now. It's over. Um, with the grace of God and the powers of football, we're lucky to be in, well, not lucky, we are in the same position as we was when we started the game, which is good. Just one game less, and we have to take that and learn from it and understand that we still have control in our destiny, which is a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot to be said, isn't it, for it being in our own hands. We're not necessarily relying on other people at this stage. We have full control. We can go out there and, like we did against Newport, really put a barrier in between, us and that, dreaded bottom two, can't we?
And we can do that. And with all due respect, it's a game that will give us the opportunity to do that. I definitely feel that, and with the news that obviously you're going to ask me about in a minute. We knew yesterday, right? It gives us even more motivation. It gives us even more belief in terms of things actually going Crawley's way a little bit in terms of the little details and things like that you need when you're in a relegation fight or a promotion fight, run. So it's a good thing. I know I seem like I'm talking in code, but it will all come to fruition, I'm sure.
Yeah, we won't keep people waiting for the news. Obviously, Jay Williams received the red card on Saturday afternoon. The club appealed the decision. The FA heard the evidence on a panel and they agreed with the club, which means that Jay will be available for selection. Obviously, that is great news for us. We were obviously very concerned about him being missing for the next 3 games. It does give the squad a real boost, doesn't it, having their captain back?
It does. It gives the squad a boost. It'll give the fans a boost once they're here. It will give everybody around the club a boost. But essentially, I think it gives him also, something even more. Not that he needed it, but there's something more to be like, the club's backed him. The coaching staff, the backroom staff, everybody backed him to believe like, look, okay, he did make a mistake, but it was not what it looked like in terms of, from the ref's angle, because even for us behind, it did look a type of way in terms of like it hit his face and it could be deemed violent conduct. But I think when we saw all the angles, it wasn't what it seemed. But in that moment, you can understand why the ref has given him a red card. But when we looked back at it, me, 100%, I definitely believe it wasn't violent conduct, and the code stipulates, it can be deemed as a yellow card, and we're thankful and we'll take this opportunity that it got rescinded and it got turned over.
Yeah, and obviously looking ahead to Saturday, obviously it gives you perhaps less of a selection headache because obviously, as we spoke about after the game against Grimsby, Jay's such an important role and important character to have out there, obviously, as well as being the club captain as well. So it must have been a little bit of relief for yourself in that sense that that he's going to slot, straight back in there and you don't have to worry about changing perhaps the shape or anything like that.
Yeah, it does. Listen, Jay has been colossus. He's been an absolute man mountain in there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Made a mistake. He knows that. But one thing I know for sure is that he's not going to hide away. So he made the mistake. He's still going to be him. He's still going to have that edge. He's still going to be someone who's dominant. He's still going to take responsibility, and it's massive for selection. Club captain, leads from example. But again, what we can't have too many of what happened by anybody, because I think obviously everybody will be looking at that now. As they're right to, what I'm about to say, fans will use that as well. They'll try and get under his skin, and players will use it. They'll try and poke the bear. And from my experience, being definition of a top player is to be able to handle those types of pressures in all types of situations. I think in a relegation fight, I think the pressure is a bit more. But, like I've always said, you learn from every type of situation. And I think it's massive for us in what it's going to do for morale, in what it's going to do for boost, but what it's going to do for everybody in understanding, well, we've not got away with one because it wasn't what it was, but we have had a little bit of luck, and we have to appreciate that and be thankful for that and now use that for our benefit.
Yeah, in terms of motivation for the group, obviously the last sort of team talk, I suppose, probably wrote itself after the Gillingham game. There was such a high. Obviously, after the Newport game, there was such a high. Obviously, suffered our first defeat under yourself on Monday. In terms of motivation, what do you use for the group? What do your sort of pre-match meetings look like? Is there a lot of motivational stuff in there? Because obviously when they write themselves, I'm sure they're obviously a lot easier to plan.
It's not. I don't call it motivation. I state the obvious. Sometimes people, when things are really obvious, people can kind of. It's not that they don't see it. It's just that it's too obvious, if that makes sense. Like, it's like, oh, that's on. Yeah, but I've done that 5 times. Let me try something else. If something's working, why are we changing it? And for me, I just state the obvious. I show them what they're capable of. I show them that they are actually in the right positions. For example, I thought all credit to Grimsby. They are a well set up team. But I do believe we kind of beat ourselves in terms of we got into the positions we wanted to get into. We knew what they wanted us to do, and we kind of helped them do that, right? So what I will be doing is showing and just making it obvious, because sometimes it's easier. People learn in different ways. People learn from doing, people learn from listening, and people learn from seeing, right? So there's loads of different ways. So now my job is to make you really, whichever way it is that you understand, is to show you that and let you see that. So we've got quite a few bits to go through today in terms of that, and some really obvious things. But when you're in this situation, when something goes against you in terms of a turnover, in terms of a decision, or you make a mistake, it's really easy to revert to type, just to do what you're used to doing, and maybe not still being brave in what you're trying to go for. You understand what I mean? In terms of taking the risk. And people will be like, oh, we're risky. Yeah, we have to risk to get reward. You have to. That's the game. And I thought we did have the positions in terms of the transition, in terms of our build up to risk. And when we kind of made a little mistake, a little error, a pass went awayward, they got out maybe one time, they countered on it, we stopped taking the risk that we needed to get in our positions. So all credit to Grimsby, but also that's something that we need to learn as within ourselves.
Morning, Colin.
Morning.
Obviously, that's brilliant news about Jay being available, and it's going to be really important because you're playing one of the most informed teams in the league in Bristol Rovers. What do you see as their biggest threat, and how are they going to make your life difficult on Saturday?
The biggest threat is, like you just said, they're in form. They're playing at home. I take that into account. But also, again, my job is to set up our team to win. So my job is to bring out the qualities that we have, to negate, obviously, what they want us to try and do, but ultimately, our strengths outweigh their strengths. We haven't got time we're not in a position to think about anything else, but we need 3 points, right? And then when the game becomes a certain way, it's like, if you can't win, you don't lose. And I understand that. But sitting here now, the position that we are in, it's what's our strengths? How can we punish? How can we benefit? That's how I'm looking at the game. I take a lot of positives how we ended the game. Listen, the only stat that matters is the goal stat, right? And the 3 points that we wasn't able to get, yes. But at the same time, you got to look at little things that can give you the confidence. And what I take away from that is 10 men that really put them under pressure the second half, you know, and it wasn't because they was 2-0 up and had an extra man, because they were still trying to, like, their coaching staff was still screaming at them to try and get up. But we was playing with a certain risk because we was a man down, and that's how we have to start the game and understand that, listen, we can put teams on the back foot, we can attack, and we can have a rest defense that is structured. But we're also good when we get to certain positions.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on a couple of your substitutions on Monday. Taylor-Richards came off just before half-time, and then Harry McCurdy came off a bit later. Were either of them injury-related, or were they both tactical?
No. Taylor was pure tactics. I saw something that we needed to close up and open up in a different position. It just so happened it was Taylor at that time. Nothing personal to Taylor. I think he's got an ability that is at times magic, you know. Was we able to get him in situations where he could do that? Maybe not. So I needed somebody else that could do it a bit deeper than he could. Wasn't injury related, it was pure tactical, and Taylor is up for selection again on Saturday. Like, there's nothing, listen, I'm not, just because you see someone come off on 30 minutes, or if you would have seen at Newport, I took Taylor off on 52 minutes, right, and he started the last game. It's game to game. It doesn't have anything to do with, I'm taking him off and he only played 30 minutes, so he's not up for selection. That's not beneficial to anyone right now. You know, Taylor's got magic in his feet. But it's for us now to get him in certain situations. And if we can't, then, you know, sometimes he's going to have to understand that. And it might be him that gets the change. And it happened, it was. McCurdy hasn't played in a while, right? And I think it was, off the top of my head, was it about 70 minutes, right?
Yeah,
like I think 3 games in 9 days for him was a lot. And I think just he was mentally tired. I could see it. And, you know, it was more of, you know, we needed a bit more freshness and a bit more control on when the ball went up, because he gives everything. He gives everything. And, you know, if a player for me is all done on 70, 75 minutes, then it's my job now to see who we got on the bench that can make the difference. And that's just how it is. It's very plain and simple. He's done amazing for us. And again, that's got nothing to do with this game now. It just so happened that at that time I could see, and listen, when I asked him, he's like, no, I'm okay. He will never tell you, right? But us knowing him, it didn't seem like it was him the last 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and it was best injury prevention. We've got loads of other games coming up, right? And what we needed from that game, he maybe wasn't able to give us at that moment. Doesn't take anything away from him. Think about it. You know, I think if you look at our team, if we go through everybody in our team, right? And this is not excuses, you've asked me, and I'm honest. We go Scott Malone. His first time played 3 games in a row, right, this season. Was ginormous. Yep. Ade. He hasn't played, I don't think, 2 games in a row this season. Yeah. Max Anderson just came back. Okay. Toby hasn't played 3 games in a row this season. McCurdy, Harry Forster, right? So when you look at Lewis Richards, okay? So when you look at our team on Monday, it might not have been just a physical fatigue. It can be also a mental fatigue. You understand? And listen, that's not excuses at all, believe me, because that's our job, right? But at the same time, I needed to see that with the in-game management, and that's why I made changes.
And does that factor into your selection for Saturday, or is it sort of...
In terms of what? If they're still...
In terms of like fatigue, mental fatigue? Or do you
No, they should all be fresh now, right?
Yeah.
The game is Saturday, and then, for example, we play every week now, right? It's every Saturday now. So after this Saturday, they've got a whole week now as well. So that doesn't come into factor. You should be ready for Saturday. We played Monday. You know, you've had a down day, and we're back to work. So you should be ready, and you should, as a professional footballer, you should be ready now for Saturday. Like Friday, Monday is tough. It's tough for the top athletes. but it's tough mentally, you know, and that's something we need to get used to, and we have to understand that that's the battle that we're in. That's going to be the difference, you know, mental. Are we able to be brave still? Are we able to have the same characteristics, the same personality, the same risk that we want? That's where it comes in. The physical is the physical. You know, we train for that, right? But it's mental now. So for me, they should be mentally ready. Obviously, I'm doing this. The time is like, 8:45, right? The players don't get until another 10 minutes. I know this comes out later, so that's why I'm saying it. And we got the meeting and we all go through all of that. So people might think, well, you should already know that. And it's a bit different. We do this in the morning. I like to do it in the morning. I know before you did it in the afternoons, but I like to have it in the morning and done. So then I got my whole day to focus about the team. Not now at 2, 3 o'clock, and I've still got selection and stuff like that, and it interrupts it. So I like to get it out of the way. So.
Yeah. And just finally from me, you've been here for 3 games now, obviously your first coaching job, and throughout your playing career, you've been everywhere and played under so many different managers. Have any of those experiences and those managers shaped how you coach, your style, and have you had any advice from them since you took the role?
Yeah, I've had contact from quite a few. There's always implements of coaches that you factor, right? You say to yourself, you know, when I'm a coach, I would like to... when I was a player, I'd like to have a coach that was X, Y, and Z. Or when I'm a coach, I won't do this and don't do that. And then sometimes you can learn real quick that sometimes that's not how it works. You know, there's things that happen that can affect things on the pitch that's off the pitch. And again, we'll speak of that maybe at another time, but there's been a lot that's gone on. But in terms of how I approach the players and approach the team, yeah, there are a few managers. I think it's such a mixture in terms of, I think I've had something like, I think my dad told me the other day, off the top of my head, 22 managers, I think. Wow. Yeah. Something like that. I'm not sure, maybe even more. So there's always something you can learn. Whether a manager that I didn't appreciate at the time, whether it was a man that I never got on with, I think there's always something to be learned in those situations, you know? And that's someone that I am. Because we can all talk about the good. I can sit here and talk to you about Zico. I can sit here and talk to you about Gus Hiddink, Fatih Terim. I can talk to you about George Hadji. I can sit here and talk to you about Fred Rutten. You know, all these names and all coaches that, you know, that I've won things with, Fabio Carilli and Paolo Pezzolano and etc. And then I can talk to you about the coaches I thought could have done better. But there's also, in those situations, things that I can take, you know. I think, I don't want to say no names to seem like I think someone else is a bad coach, but there's a coach that I didn't think was great. Now, as a coach, though, I look at it and think, oh, his setup was actually very, very decent. Like, his defensive structure was nice. So at the time, you know, you might not appreciate certain things, but when you sit back and you reflect, you know, those things hit home. It just depends the circumstance that you're in, you know, and people say grass isn't always greener, and it's true. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Can I ask you a bit about, I know you don't want to go into injuries and stuff, understandably, you don't want to give the opposition, you know, kind of the head start. But when you came in, you come into a side which signed a shed load of players in January. It's got quite a big squad. How have you gone about choosing your squad? Because there's some players who weren't involved who now are, there's some who weren't involved who still aren't, and there's some who've kind of come in and had an opportunity. So how have you gone about that process?
For me, the process was quite simple. You know, we changed the formation, as you saw. I thought the way the team was set up before, there was a lot of players that wasn't able to show their qualities because they was playing in positions that wasn't really, they were accustomed to, right? So it was hard to then gauge them from watching old games because, you know, you had sometimes certain people playing wing back, you had certain people playing in midfield that wasn't, for me, my opinion, right? And my opinion is probably the factor in opinion because I'm going to pick the team, right? So just in my opinion, people can say I'm wrong, whatever. So you had players playing as a centre midfielder, you had some playing left, you had some playing right, you had some that wasn't even involved, okay? So my job was to factor all of that, because it was about Crawley. It's not about me. It's about saving Crawley, right? It's about saving this team, this club from relegation. So what type of person, what type of coach would I be if I didn't factor all the situations, all the players we have, all the weapons, you know? So I said, when I come in, I'm going to set up training a certain type of way, and I want to see, you're going to show me. And I think that's what I've done, right? I think I've gone about it exactly what I said. As you've seen, we won against Gillingham. I changed the setup for Newport. Certain things wasn't going the way that I wanted it to go in the game. I changed the players. So right now, as we speak, today, 2025 to 26 season, it's game to game. Now, next season, it might be different, but that's next season. Let's finish what we're supposed to do. Next season, there will be, from day one, pre-season, and how we want to play and everything. Right now, it's game to game, and it's seeing how the players are training in terms of day to day, right? Of course, you look at the game and like, all right, he did really well, but it's a show me right now. It's a mentality as well. Like, who's there mentally? Who's got the personality now? That's what we need. We need personality. Yeah, they're all footballers. You know, I haven't got a bunch of, basketball players and footballers, and now they're all footballers. So we need to show character, personality, right? So that's how I've gone about it. I want to put players in their positions to be effective. And I think we've done that quite well. Okay? I think, obviously, Ade has been playing right back. He's not a right back. If you was to look at Crawley from 6-7 weeks ago, you'd be like, well, Ade's not a right back. But obviously, Ade, we believe that he could. Kellen got injured, and we believe that he could give us something from seeing the whole game. And I think he's done really, really, really well. He's been one of our main threats from that position. Sometimes it works out like that, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes as a player, you have to do a job for the team. But then what used to really, what used to blow my mind a little bit as a player, which I'm taking it into coaching and being the head coach, right, is when a player's doing a job for the team, he's playing out of position sometimes. It's not his position. He doesn't have the game you might expect him to have. And then we all sit here and be like, nah, he was this, he was that. But he's doing a job for us. He's trying to do it the best he can. So now I've got to find a way to still make him believe in doing that job because we need him, right? Not just hammer him. So, yeah, that's what we're trying to do. So it has been a big squad, but also it hasn't. We've had loads of injuries, you know. There's loads of things we don't have the homegrown, as you know. You know, so we can only have a certain amount of numbers on the bench. Comes with the territory. I knew all that before, so it's not a problem.
One player who played in position before and will always play in position is Chapman in goal. I mean, He's been brilliant before you got here and also in your time here. Just a word on him. And I get a lot of people saying, you know, he's a player who could play a lot higher than League Two, probably.
Yeah, he can. Don't let him know that right now. Yeah. Listen, he's been... especially since I've been here, he is... It's tough to really give it a word, you know. All I can say is that he has been fantastic, right? But the job's not done yet. And if you speak to him, he'll probably tell you that the job's not done. He's that type of character. But he makes some saves that he shouldn't make. Especially when, you know, excuse me. You know, for me, what the main thing for me that he does very well is when he's not involved in the game, he's still so focused to be able to make those saves. As a goalkeeper, that's tough, right? To still stay switched on when you're not involved in the game. When it's not 5, 6, 7, 8 shots coming your way and you're being reactive. When it's like, if you look at the Newport save that he saved 1-on-1, I think if you look at it before that, he wasn't involved in the play for about 10, 9, I think it was like we looked at 8.5 minutes in terms of a save. Yeah, with his feet. But in terms of save, and then to pull out that save. So in the future, can you play higher? 100%. Right now, we're very, very, very glad he's here.
And just finally, I know your message hasn't changed. Onto the next one. But do you, and it's a cliche question, I know, but are you looking at all at what other teams are doing? Because the players will tell you that they do when they get in the dressing room. We'll have a little look at how the other teams around you have got on. Do you do that at all?
Obviously, after the game, you look at results, right? You have to look at results. You have to look at the table. But what do you mean, that question, in terms of when in-game?
Are you kind of...
Do you mean like in-game?
Not in game, just after games and kind of pre-games.
In-game, you look at it, but what the teams that are in and around us are doing doesn't affect my decision on how we're playing. Do you understand? When, for example, when we're in-game, I'm not looking at scores and want to know what the score is because it doesn't affect the actual game that we're in. You understand? So we could be, for example, like 1-0 up. I see that the teams below us are losing. Someone that does that for me will look, okay, well, let's put another defender, let's shut up shop. But the game's not determine that. That's just inviting pressure to us. Do you understand what I mean? So do I look like today? Have I looked? No. After the game, yes. Table don't change to the next game. So I'm not looking now at everybody in and around us. I looked after and said, like, I come in here and was like, okay, the results have gone our way. I don't need to look at it again. I know where everyone is. It hasn't changed. The table don't change till Saturday after 12:30. Players are players. They will do. They got probably a lot of time in terms of when they go home looking at it. We need this, we need that. Me and the team, we have to focus on day to day, what's going on today, and there ain't enough time in the day to worry about the teams around us in terms of today.
Thank you very much.